So welcome everyone to my almost monthly webinar. I had to delay this one a little bit, but we'll be talking about how to heal your relationship with food, even if you don't have any willpower. So if you just want to hop in and say hello in the comments, also just type in what was the last thing that you ate. So the last thing that I ate this morning was, or this afternoon, just before our session, was some crackers and cheese. I've had quite a busy morning, so I made myself a chai latte and just some crackers and cheese because I didn't want to hop on here and actually feel too hungry. All right, hi Joan. You had your lunch of nuts and seeds. Oh, that sounds amazing. I love nuts and seeds. That sounds so cool. So thank you so much for sharing. So we'll just give everyone another few minutes before we get started. I know sometimes some people get the notification a little bit late, or they're just having some tech issues. So we'll give everyone just another minute or so before we get started. So if the rest of you, if you're hopping on, you're welcome to also type in what was the last thing you ate. And I just love knowing what people eat because food is such a great experience for me. Beautiful. All right. So welcome everyone for joining. If anyone joins in, I will let them in, but I'll get started because I know your time is precious. Wilfred said, I hope I'm saying your name right, a croissant with which is highly unusual. Oh my goodness, croissants are delicious. So yeah, I can just imagine how that was for you. So amazing. Thank you for sharing. So my name is Stell, if you haven't met me before, and this webinar is about healing your relationship with food, even if you have tried everything. Oh, okay. It's Deanne, not Wilfred. Okay, sorry, Deanne. No worries. So if you want to just type in for me, if you have tried everything and you have failed, or if you have tried many solutions and you just feel like things have just not worked out for you. Let me know in the comments. So if this is something that you have been struggling with, and also maybe just how many diets you might have been on in the past. Okay, so while you're typing that out, thank you so much for taking your time for being here today. I've been binge free now for over 3 years, and I've helped over 50 women heal their relationship with food. I've facilitated over 500 coaching hours in 1.5 years on specializing in binge and emotional eating recovery. And I'm really excited today to share this topic with you because I always felt like I just needed to find the right diet and then all my problems will go away. So who here feels like they have no willpower? Type willpower in the comments. Okay, so Joan says that she found that the paleo diet lifestyle 5 years ago and it has been amazing. Okay. And Deanne has said she suffers from severe fatigue, and that's when I give in into overeating. Okay, all right, yeah, I can understand how that extreme fatigue can actually help to lean you to to food for energy. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. So thank you everyone for sharing so openly. It really makes this webinar really interactive. I want for you to feel like you are being supported on this journey. So let's do a check-in. Okay, so I would love for you to just be present in the next hour. So please make sure that your phone is either switched off or turned upside down. I'll do the same with mine now, just so that I am fully present with you And I'd love for you to do the same. Allow yourself to immerse yourself into this training. And I want you to make sure that you get the best out of this time with me. So find a nice quiet place and where you won't be disturbed. And if there's people around you, just let them know that you are in a training and just immerse yourself in this process. And with that, we will get started with just the agenda and what we'll be covering today. So first of all, we'll just cover a little bit about me, my journey, how I'm here talking to you today about your relationship with food, and also just how, some of my struggles that I have gone through. We'll also be talking about the truth about willpower. And then we'll go into the 3 secrets of healing your relationship with food. And then we'll move into a Q&A session, which is great. I would love for you guys to participate throughout the webinar. Put your comments, put your questions. I will answer those questions at the end and in the Q&A, but at least if you pop them in as you go, then you might not forget. Beautiful. All right, so I would just like for you to just imagine if you were able to finally have a month of being binge free or not losing control with food. How would that feel? And I actually usually say this to my clients, and often they can't really imagine this because it's not something that's been part of their reality. So just know that that is absolutely possible for you. And just imagine, if you wanted to close down your eyes for a second and just see yourself in a month's time, not binged, not used food to cope, just being in such a neutral relationship with food. You're welcome to share in the comments what that would be like for you. So, as I mentioned before, my name is Estelle Coombe-Heath, and I am a binge and emotional eating recovery specialist. Deanne says it would be liberating to feel be binge free. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. So I've been a holistic recovery coach now for about 2 years. I'm a yoga teacher, and I've been binge free for over 3 years. So I can remember this day very clearly as if it was yesterday. It was 3 years ago on a Thursday night. I can still remember the night. And I've just finished one of my biggest binges ever. It started in the afternoon around 3 p.m. and it just continued going. I was binge eating at work. I binge ate on my way home on the train. I stopped and got further takeaways. And then I actually even made a dough out of flour and butter because that's all I had in my house. But I just couldn't stop myself from eating. And I was just in so much pain. I was in tears. In fact, actually, I was ugly crying. You know that real sobby, ugly cry that you can get sometimes? I was ugly crying, hugging my dog Kaiser, and just wishing that I could be free of the hold food had on me. And I've just been to so many professionals, and according to the statistical diagnostics, there was no diagnosis for what I had. So for over 13 years, I struggled with a disordered relationship with food, which then escalated and resulted in 2 eating disorders, body dysmorphia and emotional eating. And there was no one who was equipped to help me. I felt like such a failure. I felt like I didn't understand how I could be a successful career woman, have supporting and loving friends, an amazing relationship and husband, but I could just not get a grip on my binge eating. And so on this Thursday, I cried as if my best friend has just died. I felt so helpless. I felt so ashamed. I felt so out of control. And it was in that moment where I knew I needed to heal myself. I knew I needed to do something because I couldn't keep going in this cycle. And I knew that it was just painful for me to stay in this situation where I am. So I started searching ways that I could that could work possibly. And through that, I found information on rewiring your brain. And, even though I was looking for solutions, I really struggled to work up the courage to go and make an appointment to see someone. So I applied for many appointments, but I didn't show up because I was so scared of being judged. And eventually I found, through my health coaching journey, I found a coach who specialized in eating disorder recovery. And a little caveat here, eating disorder recovery coaching is very different to normal coaching and health coaching. And I learned that the hard way through my coaching journey. Is I thought if I just learned to coach myself, I'd be able to recover from my eating disorder. However, a lot of the methods I learned in my health coaching course actually aggravated my eating disorder. So eventually plugging up the courage, helping my, seeing my coach, I learned how to heal my relationship with food through rewiring my brain. I learned how to become mindful of my emotions. And finally, I built new habits that no longer had me shackled to food and calories. And 3 months into my recovery, I realized I no longer reach for food when I'm having a bad day. I could have a piece of chocolate without finishing the entire block. And it was then when my coach actually said to me, and I actually knew it within my heart, that I needed, my real work and my mission in life was to help other women who were struggling with binge eating and emotional eating. And that's how I kind of joined this journey. This is how I got to be where I am. And I'm of the belief that no one should ever have to have that kind of relationship with food. No one should suffer the same shame or guilt for what their bodies look like, for what they ate. And unfortunately, the diet industry or society tells us what we need to look a certain way to be acceptable. We need to judge ourselves and others for our food choices. And we need to starve our bodies to get there. And as human beings, it's not what life is about. We deserve to accept ourselves, and we deserve to accept others without feeling ashamed about our bodies or judging others about their bodies. And this is why I'm here, and this is what I do. And that is why I'm now the number one authority in helping women stop binge and emotional eating. And that's why I'm talking to you today about your relationship with food. So let's hop into the truth about willpower. So traditionally, willpower has been framed as a superpower almost, that's only some people possess and others simply don't. And we kind of get sucked into this notion, if we just cut out enough foods, if we just stay super disciplined on our plan and never veer off it, that is when we will have 100% control. But we think of it as more of a discipline, especially in the eat less and run more philosophy that we kind of have been introduced to. So we go on this path of eating less of the foods that cause us to binge. But eventually, our willpower or our drive to resist finally actually dissolves, and we end up in a binge. And this is when we feel like we've actually lost that control. And, I always joke, but we never binge on letters, right? We always binge on the food that we have cut out of our lives and labeled as wrong or forbidden, because our brains, especially the brain that's in charge of eating and making sure that we survive, is like a little child. It's very primitive, and it will stomp its feet, especially when you say, I'm not eating those foods that are providing me with comfort and energy. So let's then look at willpower in a little bit more detail. So the definition of willpower is your capacity to engage in behavior which is consistent with your intentions, right? And that is quite interesting when we look at the larger scale of things, because I want to share a little story with you before we get into the further definition of willpower. My client, Sam, she wanted me to help her stick to her food plan. She already had a food plan. She didn't want me to change anything about that. And she just wanted me to teach her how to have willpower. And she has been white knuckling this food plan for quite some time. And she just really started being even more strict on the plan. She wanted to be more disciplined. She white knuckled through this plan as if her life depended on it. And then she still binged. And she believed that she was weak and she just needed willpower to stick to her actual plan. So if we look at what willpower is, then in a further definition, it's your ability to inhibit your response, or being able to say no to temptation. It's being able to change your mind when circumstances change. So, for example, if you've had to forget something at home, you're able to change your mind and stick to healthy options. And it's also about being able to think about the future consequences of your actions. So my client, Sam, had all this. She really wanted to stay out of temptation. She was able to pivot and make healthy choices. She was able to think of the future consequences when she binged, but she still could not stop herself to stop binge eating. And she was like, what is this willpower thing? I just can't seem to get it right. Like, cognitively, she understood it. Intellectually, she understood it, but she could not apply it in her real life. And the truth is, your relationship with food is much deeper than self-control. So if you look at this little image that I've just popped up onto the screen, you will see that on the tip of the iceberg is our conscious mind. So this is what you see above the surface, usually if you look in the ocean. And this is where our thoughts and perceptions sit. And willpower also sits here in the on the top of the surface. We also have our dieting and exercise behaviors that sit on the actual surface level. Underneath the conscious, we have the subconscious. And this is where we have memories and knowledge. And we kind of have these memories of feeling shame about our body, or memories of how we should be eating and how we should behave with food. underneath that, we have the unconscious. And this is where our instinct sits. This is where our urges sit. Now, earlier I talked about this primitive part of the brain. And this primitive part of the brain is what drives our urges. And the urge is only driven by hunger, emotions, and habits. Habits sits in the unconscious. It's something that we do without even having to think about it. Now, mostly when we lose control with food, or we say we end up eating something, but we consciously don't want to eat something, and we're trying to willpower through it, the reason why we end up eating it is because of the unconscious urges and beliefs about our situation. And we cannot fix the unconscious with something that sits at the conscious level. So the thing that drives our eating behavior, mentioned it, I touched on this earlier, is an urge. The urge sits deep within our unconscious mind. So I'm just going to take you back to Sam, my client. She thought that if she could stick to her restrictive diet plan, which sits here on the surface, then all her problems would go away. She would lose weight and then she would be happy. However, when we work together, we realize that her limiting beliefs, which sits underneath in the unconscious, her emotions and low self-esteem, are the things that drove her eating behaviors, regardless of her intentions to stick to her diet or to infuse more willpower into her eating. Willpower sits at the surface, it's conscious. And that will not influence unconscious behaviors. So, like any relationship, a relationship with food is exactly the same. We need to dig deeper to really create a firm relationship. We have to invest time in that relationship to make it work. And it's what sits below the surface that needs to heal. You don't need more willpower. In fact, what I'm going to show you right now will show you that you actually don't need willpower. You don't need willpower to heal your relationship with food. And that's actually so amazing, because once we get out of that mindset, then we can start shifting our beliefs about willpower and the fact that we just don't have it, and the fact that we beat ourselves up because we don't have it, and the fact that we go on these continuous binge or like blowing our diets and then feeling guilt about it and shame about it. So Louise Hay is one of my favorites, amazing authors. And I have some of, actually a few of her healing books. And I just love the way she relates to emotional healing. And she said, whenever we are trying to release our lives, is just a symptom, an outer effect. So trying to eliminate the symptom without working on dissolving the cause is useless. The moment we release our willpower or discipline, the symptom crops up again. And she talks about the underlying cause and working on dissolving that. And that's underlying cause is usually not surface level or conscious. You know, if dieting and exercise was a conscious decision, no one would have eating issues, because it will all be managed right on the surface and we would just be fine. I'm not saying that there are exceptions. Some people don't have food issues. Some people have kind of grown up with a neutral or a good relationship with food. So food freedom is feeling in control of the food that you eat instead of food controlling you. So what would food freedom mean to you? Type food freedom into the comment box if you are ready to heal your relationship with food. I'll take a moment for you to type that in if that is you today. I'm going to take you on a little visual experience. So I'd love for you to sit back and relax, let go of your pen and paper, just remove any distractions. And if it's okay, I would like to just guide you on a little visual journey for 1 minute. So let's just take a moment to sit comfortably. Let's relax the shoulders and close down your eyes. I'd like for you to inhale deeply through the nose and gently release all the air out of your mouth. And gently do that again. Inhale deeply and exhale completely. Allow the body to relax. With every inhale, imagine that you are inhaling fresh possibilities. And on the exhale, you're releasing tension. And slowly release the breath and allow the breath to flow naturally through the body. Just follow this natural ebb and flow of your chest. And allow your body to soften with each breath. And I'd like you to put your hand on your heart. And imagine in 3 months from now, you have found food freedom. Just imagine this version of you. There's no more worrying about food. There's no more worrying about willpower. You just can't believe it. You never thought it would be possible for you. In this version of you, you finally have control. You were able to walk through the chocolate aisle with even the slightest urge. And it feels amazing. There was just no internal battle. There was no little voice just saying, oh, just get one little chocolate. You just pass through the aisle like it was a stationary aisle. How does it feel to have that control? How does it feel where you don't obsess with food? You don't get anxious. You aren't stressed. You make conscious, deliberate decisions around food. And sometimes you say yes, and sometimes you say no. And both are totally okay because you chose it. You mindfully indulge without being triggered. So just take a moment to step into this future version of you. And what does this version of you say to her friends and family? What does she do on vacation now that she's not hung up on controlling food thoughts? What thoughts does she actually have now that she's not thinking about food 24/7 and keeping her up at night? What choices does she make? How does she feel in her body? What does food freedom feel like? Just take a moment to take all that in and just know that that version of you is waiting for you. Food freedom is waiting for you. It is available to you. And if you had to have a chat with this future version of you, what would this future version tell you if you were both having a conversation right now? What would they share with you about your relationship with food and body? Just take a moment to engage in that conversation with future you. And gently bring your awareness back to your body. Bring yourself back into the here and now. Wiggle your fingers, your toes, your hips. And gently open your eyes. I'd love to know what that future version of you shared with you, if you would like to share that in the comments. If you would like to keep that more private, just jot it down with your pen and paper. What did that future version say to you? So, as we understood, the willpower is not enough. And if we rely on willpower to heal our food issues, we'll always feel like we're failing. We'll always feel like we've lost control. And I've discovered this personally through 13 years of agony cycles through the binge guilt cycle, hoping that eventually I would build up enough willpower, find a diet that actually worked. And it failed every single time. So what I'm about to teach you is one of actually the first pillars of my food freedom program from the binge free blueprints. And these are the three things I wish I knew, the three secrets I wish I knew those 13 years while I was struggling. And this is some of the principles that I teach and have coached over 50 women in the recovery space. And myself and them have now experienced food freedom by just applying these principles. So my binge free blueprint has three distinct pillars. The first one is named freedom. The second one is named peace. And the third one is called empower. Freedom to heal your relationship with food. Once we have a healed relationship with food, we just feel so liberated. It feels so amazing when you can, like I mentioned before, walk past the bakery aisle and not feel in conflict with yourself whether to get a donut or not. Peace is my next pillar, and here is where we heal emotional wounds. These wounds are the wounds that possibly led us into unhealthy relationship with foods, or even current wounds that might pop up, like trauma. It might be just a stressful life. And lastly, empower comes from building habits that actually last. So the three secrets I'll be teaching you with healing your relationship with food comes from my first pillar, the freedom pillar. And here's what a few of my clients have said about working with me just through this process. Nikki said she knows what she's talking about. She's been there herself. She's got the experience and the training and expertise. And more than anything, she's got a big heart and she really wants to help others succeed. Nikki and I had some amazing times together. Vilma Wood said, with her guidance and support, I was able to realize that I can trust myself around food and make healthy choices. So both of these ladies have experienced pillar one of my program, and they both feel like they are in such a much better place having found food freedom. So the very first step, or the very first secret of healing your relationship with food, is to reject diet culture. Dieting is the number one cause of disordered eating behaviors, such as emotional eating, restrictive eating, and other serious eating disorders. The most typical goal of a person who decides to go on a diet is to lose weight. However, there's a problem. Dieting only perpetuates the situation. It encourages unhealthy relationship with foods. Dieting teaches us that we have to distrust ourselves and our bodies and ignore the signals of our bodies. It says that it is fashionable to be hungry. It says it's fashionable to starve yourself to build more discipline. However, we know that that just ends up in yo-yo dieting because we don't have willpower to continue those restrictive behaviors. Yo-yo dieting starts happening more and more frequently. And this is the repetitive cycles of gaining and losing, feeling guilt, binge guilt cycles, all those kind of things. So yo-yo dieting is actually shown to have real negative effects on our bodies, including heart disease risks, long-lasting negative impacts on our metabolism as well. Dieting forces your body into starvation mode. It responds by slowing down many of its normal functions, and that includes the metabolism. So what happens is every time we go on a diet, we lose weight and muscle and gain fat back. We lose weight and muscle and we gain fat back. So we keep deteriorating in our muscle reserves. And this really slows down the metabolism. So dieters also often miss out on important nutrients. So for example, dieters might go and cut out dairy because they've heard that it's too high calorie, or this is what happened to me. I cut out dairy because I felt that it was too high calorie and the sugar from the lactose was causing me to gain weight and it was causing my cravings. So with that, I had lost out on a lot of calcium. And now I've actually created an intolerance to getting my dairy or calcium from dairy, which is a real natural source. And I now need to supplement with calcium because I can't tolerate dairy. And that's really for most women, especially in their 30s and 40s, if they're losing muscle and they're gaining and losing weight, we are putting ourselves at risk for osteoporosis, stress fractures in our bodies, and broken bones. So Roz was one of my clients. She was desperate to be on the perfect diet, and she came to see me. Because she's tried all of the diets, and she was just so anxious about all foods. She had so many food rules. She couldn't look sugar in the eye. She couldn't look at wheat. It was a swear word in her house. Heaven forbid she has a bite of bread. It was just such a kind of pain for her. And she lived in this black and white rule-based thinking that insists that all carbs are bad, avoid all the fats, sugar is poison. And she kind of just felt like she was just in this militant way of being with food. And she just said, I don't have any willpower. I'm trying to be like this. I've been taught I must avoid sugar at all costs. I must do all these things. I must cut out these things. I must fast. So she started becoming obsessive about every single morsel of food, and she was exhausted. She was exhausted from over-exercising. She was exhausted because that lifestyle was not maintainable. She couldn't stick to that. So Roz and I worked together to ditch her diet rules, and she finally felt happy in her own skin. She said to me that day that she was so happy to never go on a diet ever again. And she was thrilled that she could just walk past the bakery without having a crazy food thoughts or that little voice in her head telling her to just get a whole box of donuts because no one will see her or no one will know. So throw out your diet books and your magazines that tell you that you need to look a certain way and that praises weight loss. And get angry with diet culture that promotes weight loss in this way, that promotes unhealthy lies about how to stay thin and be in this inspiration. And that same diet culture makes us feel like we are failures every single time we fail on that new diet. Every single time we gain and like in the smallest little morsel of a gram back, we feel like failures. So let go of the diet culture. So next, if we're not dieting, and I know this is quite a big thing to understand, and this is something that I really could not understand. I'm like, if I don't have any rules on how to operate with food, how am I going to trust myself to eat the right thing and be on a path where I just function? I need those rules. I need those things the do's and don'ts and the bad and good. But actually, what all I needed was to keep my body biologically fed. So hunger is the number one reason why we lose control with food. It's the one reason why we binge. My client Mel, she actually she could not stop binge eating at night. She had a real issue with being good during the day. And then at nighttime, things would just go crazy. She tried everything. And she even found herself sleepwalking to the kitchen, and she would binge eat on autopilot. And through our work together, we discovered that she was using intermittent fasting to lose the stubborn 5 kilos that kept coming back. And we realized that if we keep our bodies in hunger or in severe restriction for a long time, we can't hear our body's hunger cues anymore. And that is often why we binge eat and we're like, oh, but I wasn't even hungry. It's not because you weren't hungry, it's because you can't even hear your body's natural communication with you that says, I'm hungry. Now, what happens when we ignore our hunger? And ignoring hunger could be out of for many things. Some people in the world just don't have food. They are, there's that saying, starving people in Africa or India, whatever the case is. They just don't have the right nutrition. They just don't have the right resources available to them. So often when they are around high calorie foods, you will find that they binge eat because their bodies are trying to survive and get as much of that energy in as possible. So when we restrict our calories like this, and I mentioned, food not being an available resource. Another one, obviously, is we forget to eat. Sometimes this happens. Life gets busy. We prioritize everything above food. Our bodies starve. It needs food. It's gonna start asking for food eventually. The last one is dieting, which we've just talked about, where we on purpose restrict ourselves in food choices. So what happens when we restrict our body like this? We actually create a hormonal imbalance in the body. So the hormonal imbalance we create is an imbalance in the hormone called ghrelin. Now, ghrelin is our hunger hormone. It's generated in the stomach, and it kind of builds up as the stomach empties, tells the brain, hey, it's time to find some food. And that's what will carry on happening in the body with ghrelin. Now, if we have too much of ghrelin building up, then the body is going to think that we are in starvation mode. And that's going to create the urge to eat. And usually when we get to these urges to eat, it's for foods that are high in energy. For example, carbohydrates or the high fat foods that you find in our takeaways, that you find in our usual binge foods. All those foods are really calorie dense. So my client Mel that I talked to you about earlier, we worked together to get her back into harmony with her hormonal balance, where she started listening to her hunger cue. She got back into harmony with her urges. We worked on creating a meal plan where she was eating regularly, she was eating high energy foods, and that helped her to really feel balanced in her life. We made it easy for her to follow that too. And she now honors her hunger because she knows if she lets herself get hungry for a long period of time, her body is going to ask for food. And the way the body asks for food is through an urge, this real desperate either thought process, feeling in the body, constriction in the throat, extra saliva. The urge can show up in any way or form. So the last secret is to feel your fullness. Now, again, diet industry really likes to make it fashionable not to be full, to only eat 1,000 calories a day. Or I've heard this horrific story about this whole community, living off 800 calories a day and using extreme exercise, and they all praising one another for losing weight in this really unhealthy way. So the truth is, only when you honor your hunger and you can actually start bringing that hormonal balance in the hunger space will your body actually start feeling fullness. And the reason for this is the opposite hormone to hunger is leptin. Leptin is our fullness hormone. And they are in a balance. They are on a tipping scale. So if you have ghrelin and an excess of ghrelin in your system, the body cannot create leptin, which means even if you've eaten a whole plate of food, you will go and get more because you cannot feel that fullness. So the diet culture teaches us that it's wrong to feel fullness. It's fashionable to be hungry. But we know now that hunger causes binge eating, and it causes you to overeat. You let yourself go hungry, even a few days after that, you will still find yourself overeating or binge eating. So another client of mine, Sal, she used to binge eat every single day. She had to hide her peanut butter in the garage, I'm not joking, because she would just eat the whole jar. She couldn't open the jar. Once it was open, she would eat the whole thing. It had to be hidden. It had to be away from the house, out of sight. And she thought about food 24/7. She was on a really restricted diet. And we worked together to getting her hunger hormones back into check. And she ate more frequently. She ate more foods that actually supported her. And once she started doing that, she actually started eating less. Funny enough, we always think if we eat more frequently, we're going to just eat more because we can't control our binges later. But she found that she actually started rewiring her empty plate mentality. So the empty plate mentality is when we're young, we are told we're not allowed to leave the table, or we can't have desserts, or there's all these different conditions if we don't finish our plate of food. So there's a lot of guilt around the empty plate of food. However, when we feel our fullness, we also need to honor our fullness and say, okay, yeah, I've had enough now. So Sal had to really work hard on breaking those rules. And if you had the empty plate rule, I'm sure you can actually relate. It's really hard to break that cycle, that guilt, just leaving something on the plate. A lot of parents actually finish their children's food because they're in that cycle as well. They pick at the plates until if the kids are finished with their food. So Sal said to me, about 3 weeks of working together, once we got her hunger sorted, that in the past 2 days, I have not even been thinking about food. It's crazy. She just kind of switched her mindset, and eventually we were able to bring that peanut butter jar back into her house. I was able to live back in the grocery cupboard. So we need to ditch the empty plate rule. Honor your fullness. We need to honor our hunger so that we can feel our fullness. And when we feel our fullness, be okay with saying, I am done. I've had enough. So if you do that, you'll learn how to tune into your fullness, your satiety, which means you won't overeat. You won't feel uncomfortably full, and you won't have those sweet cravings that we normally have after a meal either. Okay, so we're almost done. Let me just recap quickly. So far we've learned that willpower is not going to heal your relationship with food. We've learned to reject diet culture, keep your body biologically fed, and learn to feel your fullness. And this is all part of my pillar 1 of the binge-free blueprints. But I have taught you how to heal your relationship with food, but there are still elements missing here. There's still having to learn how to deal with emotional wounds that keep you in eating. And there's also how to build and make these things habits that actually stick without force and without willpower. So those of you who want to skip the trial and error, you're welcome to book a call with me and chat to me about how we can make that happen. But for now, we will jump into a Q&A session. If you would like to book a call with me, you can just scan this QR code over here. I'll also just pop it into the chat box in case the QR code is too small. There we go. And you're welcome to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at Wholesome Lifestyle Projects. Also, make sure to tune into my Beyond Overeating podcast by Wholesome Lifestyle Projects. I'm going to stop the share now.